This movie changed the way I think on a philosophical level because this is not a love story, but a story about love. Real world love, where the boy is head over heels for the girl, and the girl just likes him. She doesn't not like him, but she doesn't love him. It is about somebody falling in love with the idea of somebody else, not who they actually are. And not enough movies are made about this idea of unrequited romance and how delusional we become falling for this version of somebody we create in our head, and how painful it is when you have that expectation versus reality completely broken. It explores how easily we are willing to lie to ourselves and ignore these red flags to preserve the way we see this person. Yet by doing so, we set ourselves up for bigger and deeper disappointment later on. Because the thesis of this movie is that once you stop chasing the wrong things, you give yourself the space and time to allow the right things to come and find you. And that just because a pretty boy or girl likes all the same things that you do does not mean that they are your soulmate. In this week's episode, we will analyze the movie 500 Days of Summer, breaking down some of its most iconic scenes frame by frame to understand the hidden themes of this film and why this movie taught me how to stop falling in love with the idea of somebody instead of who they actually are, and how that changed the way I view love on a philosophical level. Welcome back to Nicky at Night. I am your host, Nicky Reardon. It feels so good to be here, guys. We are so close to 50,000 subscribers. Oh my God. And did you know that only 94% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed? What's going on? You guys like the content. You just forgot to hit the red button. You can have it every single week. Also, very exciting announcement. We are starting a Discord. If you want to talk about with all things music, movies, marketing, pop culture, I don't know. I just thought it'd be so fun to have like a giant like group chat. Honestly, like YouTube comment sections are great and stuff like that, but sometimes things just happen, or like an album releases, or when we all want to talk about it that night. You know what I mean? So if you are loving the content and you love like the stuff you're seeing, I'll be in there. I'll be chatting. I think it'd be so fun. I think we could do like lives and stuff like that. And please don't forget to give us a follow on Spotify. Give us a listen to at the gym, on your car ride to work. You know, we love a podcast. We love that you can listen to it on audio. And please, 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 if you're watching right now, give it a 5-star rating. Oh my God, we're at like 960 ratings. I think we're so close to 1,000. And Spotify, you know, it's like crazy how much that ratings and stuff really matter for discoverability and reach. So if you love the content and you want more people to love it too, because I love doing this, please give it a 5-star rating. Again, like 10 seconds of your day has the potential to completely change my life. So I really wanted to talk about this movie, 500 Days of Summer, because it lives in my mind rent-free. It is my favorite movie of all time. I literally visibly remember where I was the first time I watched it, and I think every time I have been in a breakup since then, I rewatched this movie, and it truly, like, I am not exaggerating when I say that it changed the way I view love and relationships as a concept. And I'm hoping that by the end of this video, I can also change the way that you view love and this concept of love and relationships and what it means to have a partner or pursue a partner. And I kind of broke this video down into like 7 chapters-ish. So first is just a very quick like 2-minute summary of the plot for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. And second, I want to talk about this first, 30 minutes of the movie where we kind of understand like from the early stages, the puppy love to break up, how these two people fall for each other, why they aren't together anymore, and all the nuances that go into there. Number 3, the wedding scene specifically. Number 4, the expectation versus reality scene specifically, which is the most iconic scene in the entire film. Number 5, the park bench scene, which is my personal favorite scene. And like that was the moment that like I can't even like describe the emotional overwhelm I felt like watching that for the first time. Number 6, talking about the ending, because I think a lot of people hate the ending of this movie, but I would argue that the ending is the entire thesis and point of the movie, and I'm hoping to change the minds of some of those people. And then 7, I want to like wrap it all with like a nice conclusion bow, I guess, just talking about like why this changed my idea of love specifically and how much this has changed my own relationships, because you're going to learn a lot about some of my past relationships with this episode and some of my own experiences. But hey, I like that. I think it was time for like a good, like vulnerable episode, but also combining it with like a fun movie that we all know and love. So starting with the summary. This movie, 500 Days of Summer, stars Zooey Deschanel playing the role of Summer and Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing the role of Tom. Quick little paragraph summary. After being dumped by the girl he believes to be his soulmate, hopeless romantic Tom Hampson reflects on the relationship to try and figure out where things went wrong and how he can win her back. After it looks like she's left his life for good, Tom Hansen reflects just back over the 1 year that he knew Summer. For Tom, it was love at first sight when she walked into the greeting card company where he worked. Soon, Tom knew that she was the woman who he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. Although Summer did not believe in relationships or boyfriends. In her own assertion, real life will ultimately get in the way. But quickly, Tom and Summer become more than just friends. Through the trials and tribulation of this so-called relationship, Tom could always count on the advice of his two friends. However, it is Tom's adolescent sister who is his voice of reason. After all is said and done, Tom ultimately makes the choice not to listen, and a lot happens in this relationship that we're about to dive into. So, key roles to think about. Tom personifies the idea of the hopeless romantic, Nicky fucking Reardon. Nicky Reardon. Oh my God, Nicky Reardon. I relate to this character very deeply and strongly. He is meant to represent, I just think, anybody who loves love and loves the idea of love and has always craved this idea of companionship and camaraderie and wanting to be with somebody. That is who Tom is meant to represent. And Summer represents the realist. She represents somebody who does not have that same view as love, had really tough parents and their love that kind of made her not view love the same way. And she's not yearning to be loved by anybody. She's not yearning for a relationship. In fact, she says this multiple times. Then there's two things I really want you to pay attention to as we begin to analyze this movie and look at some of the clips that I'm showing you here. Number one, the cinematography of this movie is stunning. The way that they bounce around this timeline of the 500 Days of Summer and how it goes from happy to sad, how there are these like tiny visual cues you'll even see during the, good parts of the relationship, how everything's bright, the colors are so bright, everybody's wearing these like beautiful things, and in the sad times it's rainy and he's wearing dark clothing. Like these tiny little details of the film make it just like a visual masterpiece, and I absolutely love movies like that. And then number two is this really cool detail, which is the symbolism of the color blue throughout the film. So the entire like color story of this film is blue. You'll see on the backgrounds, they get on a train, the train is blue. Blue is this through line, and what's really cool is you'll see how shades of blue actually dictate the emotional story of characters. So when he is very, very happy and in love and they're all excited, it's these light, beautiful blues. But when they're very dark and sad or fighting, it's these like dark and deep blues, where there's even moments where they're happy and fighting at the same time, and it'll be like a dark blue t-shirt and then light blue pants. Like the way there's all this detail, just keep that in the back of your mind as you're watching these clips. It's really beautiful and just so cool to see how they did that. So starting with this puppy love stage. This movie challenges the idea of falling in love with the idea of someone, and that the version of them you create in your head is not who they actually are. And that just because a pretty girl likes all the same things that you do doesn't mean she is your soulmate. Because from day one, Summer never views this as a serious relationship and blatantly states it. In fact, on their first date, she literally says she does not believe in the concept of true love, and that she expresses this to him numerous times. In fact, even before they start dating, she talks about how she's never wanted to be anybody's boyfriend, and that she has a lot of generational trauma from her parents and their divorce that has made her not want to be in love. Tom is a hopeless romantic that just can't listen. He believes that if I just keep spending time with her, then eventually she'll change her mind. And that creates this narrative in his head of I can fix her or I can change her. And that's not necessarily true. He begins to filter out a lot of these conversations and things she says. He falls in love with the idea of Summer, not who she actually is. I mean, you see this all throughout the film, right? The elevator scene where she simply talks about, I love the Smiths. They talk about music for 30 seconds, and he says that he thinks she's his soulmate. Tom overanalyzes everything, and he only interprets the things that support this pre-existing version of her he has created in his head. For example, the whole office goes out for karaoke in one scene, and when he walks in, Summer says, "Oh, people said you weren't coming." And then Tom says, "Oh, you asked if I was coming?" Which is such a perfect example. This is me. I am Tom. That is exactly how I would read the situation. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, like she probably didn't. Somebody probably just said it at some point or in conversation, or like even if she did, if the whole office is there minus one person, it's not crazy to make that observation and ask about it. It doesn't mean she's in love with you. You know what I mean? But he can't see that, or he chooses to see these things only in the way that support his vision of this girl's in love with me and we're gonna figure this thing out somehow. This even continues on to the IKEA scene. Summer literally says while they're laying down, "This is so fun, but I'm not looking for anything serious. Is that okay?" Like he's literally fabricating her own words. You know what I mean? Like she blatantly said, "I'm not looking for a relationship." And he's like, well, maybe she just doesn't know she's looking for a relationship yet. And we'll talk about this later on as I get to like the thesis part, but it is only seeing the things you want to see, looking at love through these rose-colored glasses. And I love the quote. It's, when you're looking through rose-colored glasses, red flags just look like flags. And I think that describes the entire nature of Tom and Summer's relationship. He repeatedly, she tells him that she doesn't want a boyfriend. She doesn't want a husband. He doesn't listen, and he chooses to romanticize and fall in love with her and do all of these things to assuming that they're going to be together forever. And then when they're not, he acts so shocked and surprised when she has been telling this to him for months. And that is such an interesting dynamic. Again, it's so tough, as I hope as romantic myself, where you get caught in this idea of like, well, I have to try. You know what I mean? Like you can't just be like, oh, you don't want to be in a relationship. I do. Like, okay, I'll never speak to you again. Like that, it's so not real. You're always going to wonder what if. I'm such a believer that it is better to have loved and lost than it is to have not loved at all. And that you never know, people grow in different, interesting ways. But, Tom, again, he is living through these rose-colored glasses. And you can read between the lines as much as you want, but at the end of the day, like, you do have to take the words that they say at face value. And then also, I think this is when we get to like a lot of the nuances of the scenes I'm about to go into, where Tom is kind of right, is that Summer has no self-awareness or accountability for her actions. Like when they get into this big fight and they're kind of like talking about, the what are we conversation, she's like kind of trying to allude that they're just friends. And he literally says, "This is not the way you treat a friend. You kissed me in the coffee room, you held my hand in IKEA, and we had shower sex." He's like, that is not a friendship. And he's right. He is right. Like I have been in this situation. I have been both the Tom and the Summer in both of my own relationships and multiple of my own relationships, or just situationships even. And I think that's also why I think this movie is so interesting, like especially after a breakup or after the end of something. When you watch it, you will live through or empathize with a different character based off of who you were in that relationship. And in the relationships where, I was the one where I just kind of liked them. I didn't love them. I knew that they weren't going to be my person or someone that I thought like the relationship had legs for like 5 years, but I just enjoyed hanging out with them and enjoyed the companionship. I think that person you have to have some self-awareness, and you obviously have to know when you can tell when they like you a little bit too much. You know what I mean? Like I can think of some interesting like situationships I've been in, you know what I mean? Where I was like, I was into it, but not like I was not in love with them. And I could tell that they were really feeling it for me. And I could tell by the actions they took and, just like presents and dates or things like that. And over time, I think you have to be the more mature and better person if you know that it doesn't have legs. And if you know that the other person is really catching feelings, to end it. And that is, I think, where Summer is wrong. She kind of like keeps the fish on the hook because it's fun to go fishing, instead of letting it go to me so he can find another fish. You know what I mean? And I think that, again, we'll talk about this more later on. And also, I think, too, like when you think about this, the relationships or symbolism of these characters, like the romantic and the realist, even in the breakup scene, I think that really shows, like the way Summer initiates the breakup is by saying, "What are we doing?" Like even just questioning why we're doing it in the first place. Whereas Tom is like, "What do you mean? What are we doing? Like we're together." And that is such a fundamental misunderstanding, And I think that if you want to be with somebody, you have to want to grow in the same direction, or it's not going to work. Just because your life overlaps where you are now does not mean it's going to overlap next year or overlap in 5 years. And if you're not growing in the same direction, even if you are in the same place now, it's okay to not want to do that, because then where does it go? You know what I mean? And I think, again, this is one of the big things that Tom notoriously ignores. So then we get to the wedding scene. And this entire scene, I think, is to remind us, keep in mind, this is the first time Tom and Summer see each other after breaking up. And this scene is to remind us that to Summer, the entire situation is like, it's not that deep. Whereas to Tom, this entire situation is like, this is the one that got away. And when you realize that like that's the undertones of both of their mindset when they are interacting with each other, so much of it makes sense. Like she slow dances with Tom at this wedding. And to him, he's like, oh my God, like we're really having a moment and this is so amazing. But to her, it's like, you're an old coworker and we're at a wedding. You know what I mean? But again, like when Summer has this big lack of self-awareness and lack of accountability, like when they're at the wedding and slow dancing in a very intimate setting, like, come on, you're at a wedding with peace and love. If there's one thing where emotional love is going to be high and people are going to be a little delulu, like it's watching other people get married, especially people that you're friends with. You're always going to project yourself or think about like, what if me, or like, oh my God, I can't wait to have my own wedding. So for her to like do that, be slow dancing with her ex, and then while they're slow dancing, she invites him to a party at her house. How do you think he's going to interpret that? Of course, it's like, oh my God, we're having a really great time and she wants to see me again, And again, that's what I talk about where Summer lacks self-awareness. I don't think like she's inherently wrong for not being in love with him. We don't get to choose who we love and you can't hold anybody responsible for that. But she does need to have this understanding that he is in love with her very clearly. And that if she knows that, she has to distance herself until he can like handle it at the very least. But that segues us into the expectation versus reality scene. The expectation versus reality scene is arguably one of the most well-shot pieces of film I have ever seen. This is meant to give a physical depiction of what it is like to fall in love with the idea of somebody, but not who they actually are. And that if you are living in this world of rose-colored glasses, again, red flags will always just look like flags. And how heart-wrenching it can be when you finally see that realm of expectation shatter into having to face that reality. And to me, this also shows how important it is to take what people say at face value. She broke up with him. She said that she didn't want to be a boyfriend or wouldn't want to have a boyfriend or a husband. And he could not accept that. So he just chose not to listen to it. So he lives in this fantasy land of expectation while ignoring the reality of her words. So he sets himself up for this ultimate heart-wrenching disappointment. And that is such a tough thing to do, again, when you're thinking about falling in love with the idea of somebody versus who they actually are. And think of, own situationships I've had, you know what I mean? Where sometimes they only want to text you past 10 p.m. and they don't want to actually hang out. You know what I mean? And just because when you are like hooking up with your little friends with benefits or whatever, it feels intimate and fun. Like there's a reason they aren't taking the actions to like ask you out or pursue a relationship further. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they aren't into you, whatever. Like you can't just romanticize that. Like they said they don't want something, but I'm going to somehow convince them that they do want this thing. You cannot bend people's will, especially when it comes to like love or that feeling. Like you just have people that you feel that way about, or you feel people that you don't feel that way about, And again, like when you're thinking about your own past relationships, I think about my own past relationships. Like there's times I've been the Tom, the helpless romantic, and there's times I've been the Summer. And when I was the Summer, I always in my head felt like it wasn't that deep. Like I almost didn't even think about it. But over time, you do realize like, oh, this person is really into me, or you know what I mean? Like it's hard to not have that self-awareness because you're like, well, if I don't think of it this way, then they must not think of it that way. But again, look at actions. Actions speak louder than words. Like if somebody is bringing you flowers and showing up to your house every time you invite them over at Thursday at 11:42, like they probably like you. You know what I mean? And I don't know. That's just like a big thing I've always felt. But the filmography and just like the way this scene is shot is incredible. Like putting these two things side by side of like the idea of this person versus who this person actually is. And then at the end, it just absolutely breaks him because he finds out that Summer is engaged, which takes us to pretty much the very next scene, the park bench scene. The park bench scene changed the way I view love on a philosophical level. And I want to break down this postmortem that Tom and Summer have on their relationship, because they're both kind of right, but also both very in the wrong. Because Summer spends the entirety of this relationship with Tom talking about how she never wanted to be anybody's girlfriend. Yet Tom finds out she is engaged to the very next person she dates after him. This breaks him, and it breaks his idea of love. And he says that straight to her face, saying, "You never wanted to be anybody's boyfriend, but now you're somebody's wife." And Summer explains that she wasn't lying or trying to manipulate him in any sort of way, but she just realized he wasn't the person for her. You can't be a bad person just for not being in love with somebody. And this shows that we can have expectations for our future as much as we want. But at the end of the day, we don't know what we want until we are there. And our expectations change and grow and evolve as we experience new things. And as painful as this is for Tom, it is not her fault that she is not in love with him. But Tom still can't wrap his head around this. Summer replies in the most heart-wrenching line, "One day, I just woke up and knew what I was never sure of with you." And oh my God, like, while brutal to say to somebody's face, is so like, yeah, like we don't choose. You know what I mean? Like I've been in relationships where I really like this person at the beginning and, you know, we're seeing each other for like 6 months or whatever. But I realized I'm like, I just like at one point my feelings plateaued, you know, and it's hard to like push it past that. And the irony of this scene is that while they had completely opposite ideas of love in the beginning, in this scene, they flip. Now, Summer is the one trying to convince Tom that true love actually does exist. And Tom is the one who cannot comprehend that or see how that could possibly be real. But Summer says, "You weren't wrong about love. It's just me you weren't right about." And that, again, it's so real. We don't choose the way we feel about people. Like it is unnatural. And that when it comes to love, you cannot try and rationalize it because love is not a rational thing. And if you keep thinking about, well, why did they say that? Or why did she act that way? Or why did she hold my hand here? You will drive yourself insane trying to rationalize this irrational feeling. You know, there is not always a perfect logical answer behind the way we feel. And you are searching, you're digging a hole that has no end. You're searching for the end of a book that has infinite pages. You know, like you can't ever determine that. So sometimes you have to just accept it and let it go. And that is a really tough thing, but it's true. However, where Summer is absolutely wrong in this situation, again, I told you, it's like this lack of awareness about her actions, who she is. So Tom says, "Why did you dance at me with the wedding if you were already with somebody else?" And Summer just says, "Because I wanted to." And I think that we're not supposed to like that. Like we're not supposed to like that answer, nor is she supposed to have like a perfectly solid, logical answer because it's not logical. To her, this was an ex. She was over him. She never thought about him anymore. They randomly happened to run into each other. So she was like, oh, it'd be cute to just dance. To her, it is not that deep. To him, it is that deep. And that is like such an interesting thing too. You know, like any of the times I've really mourned relationships in my past or just not got why it ended, I have tried to remind myself that, hey, remember there were times when you were seeing somebody for a little bit and then you just realized, so you're like, yeah, like I like this person, but I'm just not, it's not like a love connection and there's nothing wrong with that. You didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. It's just, there's people that it's going to happen with and there's people that it's not. And if you try to rationalize that feeling over and over again, you will drive yourself insane. You will. And yeah, I think that's just like why this scene is so amazing. And to add a personal anecdote, like a year and a half ago, I got cheated on for the first time. I was in a relationship. It was also, I think I just really romanticized this relationship a lot in my head. Again, on most situations, I am Tom. Like, I'm just a little lover boy and I want to love somebody and I want somebody to love me. You know what I mean? And I love love. I love doing cutesy shit. I love surprising them. Like all of that. I am that person. And this was a boy who liked all the same things as me, but he wasn't my soulmate. You know what I mean? But I think for a time I really thought he was, or just like, I really thought that like this was going to be something big, you know? And, in hindsight, it wasn't that deep for him. It really wasn't that deep for him. there were like, and how do I say this? Like, I don't know. Like, I think he liked spending time with me and I think he liked being with me. But like in hindsight, I think I could tell that I was not the person for him, but there were these things that like moments of this relationship, like I remember he was super, super adamant about me meeting his parents. And we literally like went to his house and had dinner, like sat down the four of us with his parents. He was really, really adamant about like me meeting his little brother and his girlfriend at the time. Like the four of us hung out. And to me, that was so like, oh my God, like this is like, he's really serious about this. He really wants this. And he didn't. He definitely did not later on. And I think, again, like to him, it wasn't that deep. To him, it's like, oh, I'm spending a lot of time with this person. Like my parents should probably know them. You know what I mean? And to me, it was like, oh my God, I'm meeting his parents. Like we're really, this thing is like really escalating. And I also think I got caught in my own delusion, truly. Like this was my first like relationship type thing since I had moved to Los Angeles, since the first time I had like had a big boy corporate job and lived on my own. And I think I maybe ignored a lot of the red flags because I was just so happy to be in an adult relationship. You know what I mean? Like it was so cool that like he was not coming to my parents' house or like a college apartment or dorm room. Like it was my apartment, and we would cook dinner and, like do these adult things. And to me, that just made it feel like, oh, like this is a real thing that's really gonna, blossom into something. And it just wasn't that deep for him. I truly think like it wasn't that deep for him. And he ended up cheating on me and gave me gonorrhea, which is how I found out. Oops. Yeah, that was not fun. Little TMI. I'm so sorry. And like, yeah, like, and it broke me. It really broke me for a long time. Now I'm past it for sure, I think, but like, and over time I just realized it was like, yeah, like I there's moments I can ponder and think about of like, I think I was making them out to be bigger than they were. Even some things that I'm not mentioning here because I don't want to like get exposed to this person, and like no beef, you know what I mean? Like I've moved on. It's fine. Like I think that he also very similar situation. Immediately, like after that, like a month or two started dating somebody else. So I think they're still together. So like that made me feel like shit. It made me feel like shit. Oh my God. It's also like nobody talks about how much like after a breakup, you really, I feel like question your own self-worth. You know what I mean? Or just this idea of like, once you see them with somebody else, all you can think about is what about me wasn't good enough for this person? Like, what is it because I wasn't hot enough? Was I not interesting enough? Was I not funny enough? Did I not get along with their friends well enough? Did I not, is my career an issue for them? Was, like you will nitpick and analyze and you can pull yourself apart. But at the end of the day, like just remember there's people you feel that way about and there's people you don't. And it's not a perfectly logical, clean cut answer every single time. And this is why I want to talk about this ending scene with Autumn, because I love the way this movie ended and people talk shit about it. They hate it and they're wrong for that, because let me tell you why. Autumn represents this idea of once you stop chasing the wrong things, you give yourself the time and space for the right things to come and find you. And I think it is so cool that he doesn't meet her at his old job. He meets her applying for a new job, because if you want to have new results in life, you have to take new actions. And this is something even I struggle with, but it's so easy to wallow in self-pity or wallow in, agony or what did I do wrong or what could I have done better? But if you want new results in life, you have to do new actions. You have to go new places. You have to try new things, right? He spends all this time after this breakup at the same job, just in misery, thinking about her all the time and thinking about how he's going to get her back. But once he starts putting himself out there, once he chases his dreams of being an architect and, starts really trying and he goes to all these new places and does all these new things, he meets somebody else who is more in line with the way he's trying to go in life at one of these things. Duh, right? Like that's how life works. It's very hard to think about that, but it's so true. And also I think what I love is that although this thing does come and find him, this new person, that does not mean it's going to magically fall into your lap, right? Like he almost walks away from this situation, but he puts himself out there. He stops, he turns around, and he goes up to this girl and he approaches her, and they end up together because he put himself in a new place, because he took new actions, he received a new outcome, and because he was not just like, oh, like what's meant for me will come and find me. No, he was in a situation, saw this girl, talked to her, and it worked. You know what I mean? And like that's what it is. I really resent this idea because I feel like so much of like, while I love Gen Z and I think spiritualism is fun, so many people are like, I'm going to manifest this without actually taking a single actionable step, like to acquire that thing in their life. You know what I mean? And you got to like take new actions to get new results. And I think that is like such a beautiful ending of this movie. It's not that, again, it's not a love story. It is a story about love. It is not this happy-go-lucky movie love where they are meant to be together, picture perfect, and everything works out perfectly. Like, it's not a Disney princess movie. It is about unrequited love. It is about falling in love with this idea of someone as opposed to who they actually are. And that is so real. 99% of the relationships every single person is in does not work out. 99% of relationships end in a breakup. And it blows my mind that not 99% of movies are about dealing with that, like the idea of that breakup or, like it's always just the happy ending. And what I like about this movie is it balances like realism with expectations versus reality, but also is a cute rom-com, but ends with this like very big metaphor on how you should move in your life and how you should view love. Like you cannot just keep expecting these things to come to you. You have to go out and seek them, and you have to try new things. You have to be a different person to acquire the things that you want, And I think that's like why this movie has just moved me so much and always will. And again, like next time you're gonna break up, I think you should watch this. And also you'll really realize how much you see the movie so differently depending which Tom or Summer like side of the equation that you resonate with emotionally. And I know that this was a really random episode. Like literally this movie came out, I think in like 2008 or something, 2010 maybe. It's old, but not enough people talk about it. And I hope that if somebody out there hasn't seen this movie yet, you should absolutely go and watch it. You can rent it on YouTube or buy it on YouTube for sure. I don't know if it's on any streamers. Again, 500 Days of Summer. It changed the way I view love. And if it changed the way you view love, let me know. Also, I absolutely love it. Some of you guys have been like really tagging me in your Instagram stories with like, oh my God, like you're sitting down eating a meal, watching the video, or you're at the gym listening to it. Like seeing you guys like and real people actually out there listening to me is so cool. And it just makes my day every single time. So yeah, like if you ever do that or you tag me in your story on Instagram, like I'll absolutely share it and I see it and it makes my day. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this very random episode, but don't forget to give it a 5-star rating. Please subscribe. Also, I joined the Discord. Oh my God, I'll post a poll in the Discord on what we should do next week. I love you all so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.